guys, Sarah here from Highland Haven Australian Shepherds and Highland Haven Dog Training, and welcome to episode 9 of Dog for Thought. Joining me is my co-host, daughter, and dog trainer extraordinaire, Sophie.
Hi, everyone.
And Sophie, give us an update. What's going on in Dogland?
Well, Tula is adjusting really, really nicely to this household, and I'm always surprised about how fast and how smart they are and able to adjust to our lifestyle.
So she is, when we're recording this, 10 and a half weeks. Mm-hmm. We've had her for a week and a half.
Yep.
And she's amazing.
Yeah, she already knows her name. She follows us around like a little duckling, which of course won't last forever because, she's at that stage where she just wants to follow you around. But, she just relaxes, has a really nice off switch. She can walk for like 40 minutes with us. I mean, she's just
so she does her training walks with us every morning. And the first few, I guess maybe the first week or so, we carried her for part of it. But the last several days, she's walked the whole 40 minutes without an issue at all. So I have sort of been letting her do that. So she is really, really nicely leash broken already. Doesn't pull. She loves it. She doesn't freak out, doesn't back up on the leash and flop around like a fish.
Even off leash, she's been doing great. Mm-hmm. She tries to do all the activities like with the big dogs, which obviously she can't do everything yet, but she tries. Mm-hmm.
She went to the vet on Friday, and that was really, really good. She, I always hope that first vet experience is a positive one because, of course, that sets up a lifetime of a calm dog at the vet, and she did great. Mm-hmm. She did really great. Of course, our vet is wonderful, and he makes it super quick and positive, and we were out of there in, I think, like 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yep.
Super quick, non-stressful, get the job done, and get out of there and go home. Mm-hmm. And we had some people over the last couple of days that socialized her and the newborn puppies. They are now 3 weeks, and they're doing well. They're finally walking.
Finally.
So, although I think if you guys have been following, you know that these puppies are unusually big for their age, but so it seems like they're ahead of the curve, but in reality, they're a little bit behind the curve physically. Mm-hmm. I would guess because they did not have a lot of litter mates, so they were not competing for milk stations, right? And they weren't like climbing over other puppies to feed. They weren't getting knocked off the milk bar. They didn't have to compete for anything.
Nope.
So I think that their physical development is slightly delayed.
And I think if we compare it to the other litter that we had, 2 puppies, which was Twiggy and Cole, Twiggy had super high drive and would just knock Cole off for like no reason. True. And then he had that little leg, so he was always trying to get back up and stuff like that. So I think it's a very, very different litter. Where these two were very calm and serene and just sleep. And like that litter, they were loud and like all over the place because it's Twiggy. So,
yeah, I think that by tomorrow is Monday, they will actually be ready for solid food. Normally, we feed them solid food at 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. It's a mush. It's puppy food with a milk replacer blended to a fine mush. And sometimes, in litters past, we've actually fed them before 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yep.
A couple of days before 3 weeks. But most of the time, it's at that 3-week mark we introduce them. But if they're not even consistently standing and walking, like these guys, you can't introduce food because they literally can't stand up and eat. So we had to delay that. We're going to try tomorrow. I think I just checked on them now, and actually they're quite lively today.
Yeah, they're pretty walking. They were walking around pretty well yesterday.
Yeah.
And
they got a lot of socialization, which really helped.
Yeah.
I've also let Tula, got to remember all these T names. I let her sort of bat them around a little bit gently, like play ever so slightly too rough with them because they sort of need that stimulation, that's something to push against, something to complain about. Stop, don't do that to me. Getting back up again when someone knocks you over, which is what a larger litter would do for them, that I think they're missing. So I think that's helped and sort of got that muscle tone to speed up a little bit and be more as their age. Mm-hmm. So
now, once they start eating, a normal mush and stuff like that, I feel like they're gonna lively up because they're going to be like running around trying to get that food and stuff. It's just like right now with the milk and everything, they've definitely been catered to a lot.
Yes. And they'll be outside soon in the next few days. If it's warm enough, we'll take them outside. And then once they start to really be little puppies as opposed to guinea pigs, we'll spend a lot of time outside because it's going to be a nice, it'll be a nice warm spring. And we will bring Tula with us. So she'll be running around out there with them, which will help, again, get them to get some more physical skills that they need, that they would get from having a larger litter. So they're doing well, and Tula's doing great, and things are good here. So maybe we should get started with the show.
Yeah, let's do it.
So today I thought we would talk about how to select a puppy/dog to add to your household. So this can be done, of course, in a couple of different ways. It can be done through rescue. You can do a puppy, you can do an adult dog, or of course it can be through a breeder. So I think we should probably start with how to pick your breed, because even if you're picking a mixed breed, you're still picking breeds, breeds plural, right? So if you have a dog that's a beagle mix, it looks pretty much like a beagle, you better be prepared that that dog's going to act like a beagle.
Yep.
And it's, it's good to, sometimes you get these super mutts and you're like, oh my gosh, they're like a generic brown dog, and it's really hard to sort of determine what breed you can expect. But most mixed breeds display some sort of, physical attribute that is a
or
breed.
like a dominant, breed trait in general. So
right. So the most important thing, of course, is deciding what breed you should choose, and how would you suggest somebody go about choosing a breed?
So I always think number one thing is lifestyle, right? So what type of environment do you live in? What kind of life do you live? Are you a hiker? Are you in the woods all the time? Or do you just lay around on your couch and you just want a companion to lay with you? Do you live in an apartment? Do you have a house? Do you have a fenced-in backyard? Do you not have a fenced-in backyard? These are all really good points that you really need to think about before getting a dog.
Yes, true. Also size,
yes,
right?
Size makes a big difference as well.
So certainly your environment. So are you in a city, in an apartment? Are you in the burbs, or are you in farmland where you have endless land? That's all going to determine what kind of dog you have. Generally, somebody who has a giant fenced-in backyard, probably is not looking for a Bichon, but maybe. And of course, the reverse is if you're in an apartment, we hope that you're not looking for a high-energy, high-drive dog in an apartment in New York City. Of course, we do see that. That does sort of keep us in business. So I'm not so much criticizing that, because if everyone did this perfectly, maybe you and I would be out of a job.
Oh, yeah.
So I think what got me started thinking about this particular topic for this episode is what happened the other day with a potential training client. It was an older couple in their 60s, I would say, and they had decided they wanted another dog. They had but they had a Nordic breed, a small Nordic breed, for 30 years. They'd had 3 different Shibas for 30 years. And they hadn't had a dog in the last several years. They decided they wanted to add one in, and they decided they definitely wanted to do a shelter dog, a rescue dog, which, good for you, great. And they went to the shelter and got
an Akita Husky mix.
An Akita Husky mix.
In their 60s.
Yes. An adult male.
3 years old?
I think he was 2 or 3. He was intact when they found him, so he was recently neutered, adult male Akita mix. Now, they called him an Akita Husky mix, and I have to say he did actually look pretty much like an Akita Husky mix.
You think that I don't see any Husky in him.
Well, the blue eyes, for sure.
But I'm pretty sure Akitas can have blue eyes.
Less common, much more common in Huskies.
I mean, to me, he just looked like an Akita, and he acted like an Akita.
Yes, he did act like an Akita. So they wanted to send him for training because he was, totally unpredictably pulling them off their feet when he was walking on a harness out in the world and seeing people or dogs or wildlife. He was completely pulling them off their feet, which of course is, a real danger to both dog and person, and the community at large, by the way.
But it's also a normal behavior. Like, we have to, he's a Nordic breed. And what do we do with Nordic breeds? We put them on sleds and they pull us. So he's technically doing what he's supposed to do.
In a harness, right.
In a harness, yeah.
Right. So there's many layers there that we hear a lot when people call us looking for training. The number one being the leash pulling, and 9 out of 10 times that person has a dog on a harness. We do not subscribe to harnesses because harnesses activate what's called opposition force reflex or opposition reflex, which is if anyone has pushed on if your dog's laying on you on the couch and you try to push your dog off, you'll know what oppositional reflex is, right? They don't just hop up off the couch most of the time. What do? They lean harder into you. They have a reflex that if you push on them, they push into the pressure rather than yield to it, particularly if that pressure is on the chest with a dog who has been bred to pull, like a husky.
Yep.
Right? If you watch dogs compete in sports like agility or any kind of high energy.
Schitzun.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure I've ever seen. Well,
yeah,
maybe.
they do. Yes,
Okay.
they do.
You're right. They probably do.
They hype them up and they pull them back on their chest to hype them up to go either bite somebody for like attack training, or to do agility. You see them hype them up by pulling on their chest to let them go so they jump
dock
through
diving.
the course.
Anytime you're trying to wind your dog up, right? They actually stand. You straddle your dog. You stand over them. You put your hands across their chest and you sort of pull your dog back towards you, and your dog will push into it, and it will actually hype them up.
Yeah, it
right?
creates drive.
It creates drive. Exactly. Thank you. So that's what a harness does. And so when somebody puts a dog on a harness and then says to us, I don't understand, he's pulling harder than ever. Of course he is. But that's another podcast. So this dog was on a harness, pulling them off their feet, being a danger to themselves and to the community at large, because if he got off this leash and he was being reactive to another dog or wildlife or whatever, they wanted to send him for training to sort of fix these issues that they were having. Of course, ask them follow-up questions about how he is in the home. And they said, overall, he was pretty good in the house. They were not doing things like crating him. They were just sort of leaving him alone in the house, which I personally would never do with a 2-year-old dog who's never been in my house before. But it seemed to be pretty much working out. As we got closer to training, he had some fecal results that had to be resolved prior to coming to training because he came out of the shelter. So they were sort of waiting on that. They reached out to us several times with concerns about his behavior outside during walks. And so they weren't sure if they wanted to go ahead with the training because, that's a big financial commitment. And was this the right dog for them, et cetera, et cetera. I did ask them, why would you go to the shelter and choose a full-grown male Akita for your life situation? Did not seem like a good fit to us. Would you agree?
I don't think it was. I mean, for certain people who've had experiences with that breed, I think that's a great situation for you to use all those skills that you've had owning previous Shibas and really help a dog. But in this case, never owning one before and then bringing it into your house when you're older, on the older side, and then being surprised that he's, showing pulling or, showing these very typical behaviors, it just didn't really seem like it fit their lifestyle. So we decided to go and
do an evaluation
and see if, it's accurate. Because a lot of the times people kind of bluster it up to try to make us believe them, which we already believe them about, the problems that they're having. But he seemed, we wanted to make sure that it was a right fit for them and they weren't committing to all this money and then it wasn't going to work out for them.
For sure. So we don't ever want to take a dog that we feel is not a good fit and will eventually be rehomed after they invest this, big chunk of money to train it. We don't want to do that. So it did not on paper seem like a good decision on their part to adopt this particular dog into their life situation. But then again, we have to go and actually see the dog and the environment and come up with a real professional determination. I think we both expected to see a nut job when we showed up, the way they described him. And when we showed up, we pulled into their driveway. He was laying on the floor behind a glass storm door and didn't even get up.
Nope.
when we pulled in and got out of the car.
We walked up the stairs and I was expecting him to like drool all over the glass and bark like a lunatic. And because that's how they described him, like out of control.
And to be fair, that's what we encounter with almost every dog.
And
I mean, our own dogs included, they're quite excited when people come to the door.
Exactly.
So the fact that he stood up and just sort of gently wagged his tail and invited us in the house. And he had such a nice temperament. I thought, wow, okay, this is not what they described to me on the phone. We proceeded to talk to very nice people with absolutely good intentions.
Yep. And for the most part, they had pretty realistic expectations of like what they were looking for from him, from the conversation that we had.
And they had some good dog background. They weren't dog ignorant. Some of the things they needed some clarification on about dog behavior and whatnot. But for the most part, they were really well-intentioned people who seemed quite committed to this dog and ready to do what needed to be done if we said that we felt we could help him. They were really very skeptical that we could help him with the leash walking, which I was not skeptical about at all. What is a much harder thing to work on in a situation like this is the overall temperament of the dog, because that we cannot change.
That's who he is. So if he was like really reactive to people at the door and all over the place and jumping all over everybody, that's a much harder behavior to fix than reactivity.
Or sitting, as we were sitting on the couch, threatening us, coming over and trying to bully us, which is not unusual for a dog like an Akita. Coming over and staring at you and being mildly aggressive is not something that you wouldn't see with a big, tough dog like an Akita. He didn't do that at all. He was quite happy to see us. He was very affectionate. When I did push him off of me, when he got too much in my space, I pushed him back. He was very much yielded and sort of shrugged his shoulders and walked away.
And went and laid down.
Yeah. So I saw a dog that had tremendous potential, and that the only thing we really had to work on was the leash walking, which I knew we could do because we can't change who he is, and who he is seemed like actually a surprisingly good dog. So we left there really relieved and excited to get started on his training, which we could not do for, I think, 2 weeks because they were waiting for clean fecal results to come back in order for him to attend training. Long story short, he's back at the shelter. So in the meantime, in the 2 weeks in the middle, they continued to try to walk him on a leash and were continually frustrated with his lack of ability to walk properly, in quotes, on a leash, when I suggested that they literally stop walking him for 2 weeks so that he can attend training and be taught how to walk on a leash. They were resistant with that idea. They felt that that was an impossible request, that he needed the exercise.
And in a way, almost cruel to not walk him. When in reality...
What's cruel? He's back at the shelter.
Well, okay. What's cruel is the fact that you're setting him up for failure, right? You're putting him on a harness, you're walking him, you're expecting him to have these really realistic expectations on the leash, which he does not have these skills.
Unrealistic expectations.
And he doesn't have these skills, and you're asking him over and over and over again for these skills that he has never been taught to do.
Right.
So that is unfair.
So you give a book to a first grader and say, here, go ahead and read. And they look at you and say, well, I can't read.
Well, you should know how to read.
Right. Well, it's so frustrating. Wow, this kid can't read. Well, have you taught him to read? Well, no. But he should just know. It's the same thing. This dog didn't know what was expected of him. It had no foundation of impulse control.
At all.
And you're asking him to control his very natural impulses and listen to you, and when you haven't taught him any of those things.
No.
So,
plus, if we look at the background of Akitas, they really don't need that much exercise.
And especially this dog. He was so mellow.
Chill. And they had a huge fenced-in backyard. So they could have just played fetch with him in the backyard, hung out with him in the backyard for 2 weeks, and he would have been fine.
Yeah. So to be fair, I don't know what criteria made it so they ended up returning him to the shelter. They did not share that with me towards the end. A lot of emails went back and forth. And I just kept asking them to sort of temper their expectations for 2 weeks so we could get him training and get him back to you with an understanding of what you want at that point. I don't know what happened in the He could have started resource guarding. I don't know. They didn't tell me there. It was very upsetting for them to have to bring him back, and I understand that. You know,
For sure.
what Sophie and I think feel really frustrated, and I'm sure you guys totally get this, is that it was a poor decision by them to adopt this dog that was wholly not in their ability to live with. This big, powerful 2-year-old male fighting breed. And then when it didn't work out, it's just so incredibly unfair to the dog. I also think the shelter is quite culpable in this very poor decision making. So although I think there is some blame to lay on the shoulders of these very well-intentioned, for all intents and purposes, very nice people, they certainly made a bad decision with the breed that they chose out of the shelter. But I get frustrated with the shelter that they would say, yeah, this is a good fit.
Yeah.
You know, and then predictably it blows up and the dog is back in the shelter. It's just a sad
Common
situation.
story.
Right. So this is where Sophie and I started talking about breed compatibility. And I know we've mentioned that before. It's not like some groundbreaking epiphany, breed compatibility. I think that the biggest mistake people make, and that we see over and over and over again, and we see, again, false narratives perpetuated in our culture, is that you just have to love your dog.
Yeah.
Love
them enough,
Yeah.
then they will listen to you and respect you and understand what you want, which is just not true.
Also, my favorite saying, there are no bad dogs.
Yeah.
Also
What?
false.
Like,
Although this dog
there's
did not,
no bad people either, right?
This dog didn't fall under the umbrella of a bad dog.
No.
As far as we know, from what we know of him. Certainly there are dogs who are not well balanced and who are not safe in communities and homes. It frustrates me that there's this belief out in the world that you are a bad person, you are not a dog person, you're a bad person if you think that there are certain dogs who are just not appropriate for homes and probably should be euthanized to prevent the euthanization of a really good dog in another shelter who doesn't get a chance at a home, right? If we're the bottom line is we are euthanizing shelter dogs in this country, period. That is never going to end.
Nope.
So let's make sure that we're euthanizing the right dogs if it has to be done. And I don't know, that sounds maybe terrible. But if you have a really sweet, let's go back to beagles. You have a really sweet beagle mix who is being euthanized in a shelter because of room, and yet people are adopting these pits and pit mixes, adult pit mixes that have behavioral issues, and this is big, powerful dog and is a danger to not only the people who are adopting him, but the community at large that dog lives in, a danger to other animals, other dogs, cats in the neighborhood, children. I mean, every day it seems like there's a news story that comes across the news of somebody being mauled or killed by a dog in the neighborhood. That dog should be the one euthanized, not the sweet, shepherd mix who never had a chance at a home. So I know this is not, something that nobody thinks about. I'm not an original thinker on this. But when we encounter situations like this particular Kita mix, it becomes really clear how misguided people are in their, although well-intentioned, in their love for dogs. So you have this theory that there are two types of people, dog people and dog lovers. And I challenge the audience to think which you are, right? Not you as Sophie, the audience. What everybody thinks of themselves. Are you a dog person or are you a dog lover? Now, our definition is a dog lover. Both groups love dogs, right? But a dog lover loves dogs without a real understanding, perhaps, of dog behavior, and maybe not considering having realistic expectations for their particular dog. So they will bring them in situations where their dog is uncomfortable, unhappy, but because it makes the owner feel happy, and this is what they imagined when they got the dog, they do it anyway. A dog person is someone who says, you know what, I really wanted a dog that I could eat in an outside restaurant on the street in New York City and have my dog lay at my feet. That is what I imagined when I bought this dog. But I see that my dog is very uncomfortable in these situations. So I'm not going to bring her in this situation anymore, even though it's what I really wanted. That would be somebody who's a dog person.
And then adapting their dog's needs and wants, right, to what the dog feels comfortable with,
right.
And what
Before
their own.
own.
Exactly,
right.
exactly. So that's a dog person.
That's a dog person. So there's nothing wrong with the dog lover.
Mm-mm.
Both groups love dogs. We understand that. But what we ask people to do is to try to be more of a dog person and put the dog's needs above your expectations or fantasies of what you wanted when you got this dog. And when you get a 2-year-old male Akita mix from the shelter, you better be ready to temper your expectations.
Well, and adapt, to what they want and they need. I think a really good example is I had all these high expectations for Twiggy. Like, I was going to take her all these places. I was going to do all these activities with her. She's going to be great with people. She's going to be, I'm going to train her to do all these things. And then she came out of the womb and she's super duper high drive and needs to be working all the time. And I was like, okay, let's put a lid on this and then let's see what she wants. So I can't take her paddleboarding. It makes her extremely anxious. She wants to work the entire time. It's too much sitting around, laying around, not focusing. So I was like, okay, well, she can't do this activity. What activity can I do with her? Oh, mountain biking. She has to think the entire time. She's running the entire time. And so I think that's what we're talking about with kind of having more realistic expectations of, like, this is not the dog I thought I was going to get. And now I'm going to adapt to what she wants.
Right. So we're not taking a round peg and jamming it into a square hole.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a dog person does. That being said, you can get a dog from the shelter. That's absolutely wonderful.
And super adaptable.
So we have to figure out what kind of breeds are appropriate for you, what kind of size you're looking for. I think size is a whole thing. People are like really bigoted about dog size. Have you noticed that?
Oh, yeah. It's one of my biggest pet peeves.
When somebody says, oh, no, I don't want that dog. I only like big dogs. I hate small dogs. They're so yappy. They're so this. They're so that. That drives me crazy.
It's kind of putting like a stereotype on small dogs. Like, I don't know.
It 100% is putting a stereotype on a
just,
small dog.
It just bugs me because you can, like, Twiggy is a small dog. Like, I forget that she's a small dog, but she can do big dog activities. Like, I have no problem. Like, I don't pick her up or do anything like that with her, but she can jump a fence. She can, bike with me. I don't need a big dog to do all these really big dog activities with her. And she's in a realistic size for me.
Well, and let's be realistic. Most, small dogs have smaller problems.
Mm-hmm.
Behavioral problems are smaller and more manageable. So medium to smaller dogs are more appropriate for the average home. They just are, folks. They just are. Because if you have a dog that's 20 pounds and has a problem pulling on the leash or jumping on people, they're not going to knock anybody over. They're not going to pull you off your feet. Right there takes 2 things off the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that more people should consider medium to small dogs rather than saying, no, I grew up with a German Shepherd. I grew up with a Lab. I grew up with a Great Dane. I grew up with a St. Bernard. I want a gigantic dog like that. I won't even consider anything smaller. I think is a mistake. I really do. In the shelter, when you're getting a dog that is a mix, that comes from a rescue type background, you don't know what you're getting. So perhaps going smaller is a good idea when you're getting an unknown quantity from the shelter. If you're getting from a breeder, of course, we have to determine what breed you want. And of course, we've talked about, breed type and behavior and personality and traits and all of that stuff in previous episodes. It's very easy with the internet you can just even go on the AKC website and look at, a description of all of these different breeds, and it will tell you the coat maintenance, whether they shed or not, how much exercise they need, how intelligent they are. That's the other thing. People are always saying to me, I want a smart dog.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
You want a smart enough dog
Mm-hmm.
or a dumb dog. Those are the 2 things
Well, and
you should
I
be
think
shooting for.
I think they're thinking about like a dumb dog as like lazy, doesn't want to do things with them.
Or maybe can't learn. Maybe they think a dumb dog can't. And when you're talking about the things that the average owner trains their dog to do, any dog of any intelligence can accomplish those things.
Absolutely.
Even a really, really big dummy.
Yep.
So intelligence, unless you're doing a specific task like a sport, like, and that, by the way, that's Tula dreaming this week. If you're squeaking in the background. If you're doing a specific task that requires a specific type of intelligence, if you're herding or doing agility and stuff like that, then that's a whole different thing. But if you're talking about the average family, even a really dumb dog is plenty smart to learn what needs to be learned to be a wonderful pet.
I would not say, kind of going back to like retrievers, I would not say retrievers are the smartest dog,
no, but
they are really
trainable.
Good with people. They're really trainable. They're super adaptable. Their coat is manageable. It's we go back to retrievers over and over again because it's a great all-around dog.
Right.
They're not super smart, but they know enough. That's all you really need to know.
Well, they're very biddable, and so quite smart enough to do everything you want to do in a typical home. So size matters. Intelligence matters, or not just specifically looking for a breed that is super smart. Of course, drive and energy, really important. You go on social media and you see these Malinois do these amazing things, and people think, or you see Border Collies do these amazing things, and people think, oh, I definitely want that. No, you don't. No, you don't, because you're seeing a snippet of the behavior, and when the camera goes off, that behavior is still going on.
They don't turn off.
And that demand for that behavior is still going on. That is a dog that takes your entire life to manage.
Yep.
And they're designed for very specific situations and wonderful in those appropriate situations. So you've chosen a breed. You've gotten a dog that has the right amount of drive, the right amount of intelligence, the right size. You then have to talk about how to find a good breeder. Suggestions on that?
I kind of want to go off track a little bit, and I think this is like a little hidden secret for all you people who have been listening this far. If you're looking to not have a puppy, you're in your 60s, you want a new dog, you love Shibas, and you're looking to have an adult dog. You don't have to housebreak, you don't have to do any of that stuff. Go online and find a retired female, a retired male from showing or whatever, and go to a breeder and just take a look at them. Go check them out. Look at the breeder page, see if they're qualified. Then you get an adult dog who's housebroken, who's been showed, so they're great with people, who've been around other people, other dogs, and are looking for a forever home because, they've finished breeding. So you get that aspect of like, oh, I feel good. I got to like, quote unquote, rescue this dog or give this dog a fulfilling life. And you don't have to do any of the puppy stuff. That is like the biggest gem.
I agree there that getting retired show dogs is definitely a well-kept secret.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked in previous episodes about my dad, who has a retired show dog.
He's had two
retired females, pugs, and they were just the most phenomenal dogs. And sometimes they're hard to find, depending on what breed you're looking for, how popular the breed is, how popular it is in your area. You will pay top dollar for a retired show dog. You won't get them for free. They don't, breeders don't give these dogs away. They shouldn't. This is a dog who has, great life experience. They are absolutely crate broken because they're retired show dogs, and they spend their lives traveling, so they have to be really good in the crate. They're great with other dogs and people because they've been handled from a young age.
But you pay as much for a retired show dog as you do for a brand new puppy.
Right,
and you
don't
get
have to
so
do
much
all
bang
the
for your buck. I mean,
really
that is literally like the creme de creme. What do you call that?
Creme de la creme.
Yeah, like that is the perfect dog. You're looking to get a really nice quality dog and not have to do all the annoying stuff that comes with a puppy. Get a retired show dog, people.
Plus, they're going to be physically, they're going to be a beautiful example of the breed because they're retired show dogs.
Exactly.
So they're sometimes hard to find. You just have to be willing to email breeder after breeder after breeder asking if they have any, adults or juveniles, that maybe they kept back for a year, 18 months to see if they were show quality and decided not to show them in the end. and they're going to rehome them at that point. There's lots of breeders who hold dogs back and then home them as adults. The resource is out there. If you've determined, like you say, if you've had this breed over and over again and you want to continue with that breed, but you don't want to have a puppy, that's a great way to do it. And you just send a million emails and you will get some responses. Most of the responses will be, sorry, I don't have any at this time. But every once in a while, you'll get somebody that says, yes, I have this one or that one. And then you can go from there. I think that's a very good suggestion if you have selected your breed and you don't want to go the puppy route.
And just if you put this little bit of work in now, it's going to pay off because you're going to have this dog for 7 or 8 years or maybe even longer than that. And it's just going to be an amazing dog. You didn't have to do any of the grunt work, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that's a great idea. If you're looking for just a breeder, you're just a puppy, so you're looking for a good breeder. There's gooddog.com is a great resource. It's a newer website. It came into being just a few years ago. And they do vet their breeders. You have to qualify, you have to qualify for their criteria to be a good dog breeder, a qualified breeder on their website. So they do some of the background to help ensure that it's an ethical breeder. Of course, you can never do it all as a website. But that's a great resource, gooddog.com, for sure. I am on there, as is all of my breeder friends that I know. And then, of course, you just have to reach out to them and talk to them. A good breeder will communicate well. A good breeder will not answer your emails for 2 weeks. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You're a business person.
Yep.
This is what you do. You breed dogs. You want them in a good home. Somebody emails you. You need to respond, and you need to respond in a timely manner, in a polite way. I always require a phone call, and I vet my potential buyers through the phone call. That's my interview process. Some breeders have forms you need to fill out before they'll talk to you. That's totally understandable as well. That sort of weeds out the people who aren't serious. But for me, when we get to the interview process, it's a phone call, and it usually lasts a half an hour, 45 minutes, and we just have a conversation. And I listen for red flags for this, owner or potential owner. And they should be listening for red flags for me. Mm-hmm. For me, the red flags are people who will say something like, oh, well, I had a dog a couple of years ago, but I had to get rid of it because I had to move out of my apartment or something like that. That's a red flag for me. If you're getting a dog and not able to keep them because you have to rent a new apartment, that's not somebody that I will sell a dog to. If people talk about, bad experiences with previous dogs, I really listen very carefully to see who was the culpable actor in that case. Like, I adopted an Akita Husky mix and it didn't work out. That would not necessarily eliminate you as a potential dog buyer, puppy buyer from me.
But it sets up a flag.
It may and may not. It may actually be a green flag to say, I see the mistakes I made. I got this dog that was completely unsuitable for my lifestyle. And then I returned him ethically back to the shelter so he was cared for. And then I sat down and did my research and realized that that was not an appropriate breed for me, and this is. That would be a green flag for me. Yeah, somebody who's made a mistake, corrected it in the most ethical way possible, learned from it, and is now doing something different. That would actually be a green flag for me. Of course, it could be a red flag in the opposite direction too. A breeder should be polite. They should be knowledgeable. They should absolutely be willing to invite you to their home. They also should have some sort of social media and definitely a professional looking website. I would never buy from anybody who doesn't have multiple pictures and short videos of all of their dogs, because that gives you a real good idea. First of all, I'm looking in the background. I am looking at the dog, but I'm also looking at the background.
Yeah. How are they kept?
Is it clean?
Is it clean?
Is it well lit?
Yep.
Do the dogs in the background, are they groomed? Are they brushed? Are they clean?
Yep.
What's their behavior like? How are people handling them?
Is it a nice photo of them? Are they sitting still, nicely posing? Like, that is a big green flag for me. Like, even the people who have, like, I go on Good Dog all the time just for fun, just to, like, pretend to buy a dog. I don't contact anybody. I just, like to look at the photos. And I love the ones where they have them little dressed up in little cowboy hats or like in flowers for spring. Cause I'm like, you took time. Like you love these dogs. You're talking about
the real tiny babies.
Yeah. You took time and you really love these dogs and you're trying to sell them and showcase their features and stuff like that.
So that would be one component of determining that somebody is a good breeder. One component, for sure. So somebody who is really an open book as far as all of their stock, all of their dogs, is really important to me, which is why social media is such a great way to sell dogs, because you get to see the dogs in all kinds of situations, whether they be professional, like in the show ring, or whether they're in the backyard with their toddler, right?
I also think is a kind of middle flag for me is how many dogs are they breeding? So are they breeding, more than 5 dogs? Then I'm questioning them. Like,
you mean if they have like more than five breeding bitches and 5 litters on the ground?
And they're all different types of dogs. And
I gotta
all
wonder
breeds.
How much individual attention those puppies are getting. Are they getting that all important socialization and handling in that 1 to 8 week period? They really do need to be handled and socialized in that. And a person who breeds a ton of dogs is likely not able to do that.
Or, they have multiple kinds of dogs. Like, like let's say they have doodles and corgis and Aussies and German Shepherds. I'm like,
right.
Like,
so
and
that's
how
a kennel
many puppies
situation.
do you have? Like, is that a puppy mill? Like, if you go on a
Yes.
website and you see like a bunch of different variety of dogs,
Yes.
that's a puppy mill. And you need to click off that website and go find a breeder. So usually breeders only breed 1 to 2 types of dogs.
1 or 2 types, yes.
Yes.
Sometimes 3, but and if you sort of click back in the history of that breeder, you should see the evolution of that.
Yeah.
Like you should see, well, we started with Australian Shepherds.
And now we're moving to doodles.
Right.
And now from doodles we moved from sheepdogs. So you should see kind of an evolution, and it should show in their back history. Like they should talk about it.
Right. How we evolved from breeding Australian Shepherds to breeding Borzois.
Yeah. There you go.
Yes, so I think if it's multiple breeds, you got to question, is this a puppy mill? For sure.
Yeah.
You should be able to visit yourself where they are. That's not always possible. As you all know, I bought Tula online and I flew out to pick her up. I did not see her breeder's setup. I saw enough video and pictures and felt very comfortable on the phone with this young woman who was doing this that I didn't feel the need to see that.
The same thing with Maisie as well.
Yes,
you did a Zoom call.
We did a Zoom call with her, which was great. I could see her demeanor and temperament just by moving around the room as we were chatting, and that sort of gives me comfort. So, there are certainly when you talk about puppy mills, a lot of them are from Pennsylvania, a lot of them are from Missouri and Kansas, a lot of them in the Midwest.
Amish. So if your breeder is Amish, that's a huge red flag for me. Just because of their history of breeding animals and all that stuff. Most likely they're a puppy mill if they're Amish.
Yes, not always.
Not always, but a good percentage.
But you definitely need to investigate a little bit more, for sure. Yeah, so a good breeder is someone who you feel really comfortable with. So they should be not rushing you off the phone. They should have a nice conversation with you. They should answer all of your questions knowledgeably. Of course, the puppies should be wormed before you pick them up. They should have 1 set of vaccines at least if you're picking them up at 8 weeks. They should come with a contract with at least a 1-year health guarantee. You should ask to look for any genetic testing the parents have so you can be prepared for the puppy that's, what they possibly might carry. All of those things should be really pretty standard as a good breeder. So definitely stuff you're looking for. So first you're going to choose your breed, then you're going to look for your breeder. First you're going to choose your breed, then you're going to go to the shelter and look for a mix or a purebred of that particular breed. So we should maybe go back a little bit and talk about then going to a shelter or going online and picking a dog that's maybe going to get transported from the south as a rescue dog, what to look for. I'd say the number one thing you want to look for is size, particularly if you're talking about a puppy, right? And you have determined what size you're comfortable with. You want to know the mix of those breeds, so you can predict perhaps the size of that dog. That's going to be important.
And then do research on those breeds and see if those breeds fit your personality.
Sometimes they have, the mom. They have information on the mom, and they can say, well, whatever, she was a 40-pound lab mix. That's going to give you a real idea of the size of the puppies, even if you don't know the dad. So size for sure. You want to ask questions about temperament. Are they high drive? How much energy do they have? That kind of stuff. And an ethical rescue organization will tell you those things. You definitely want to share your stats, particularly if it's something like I live with children, particularly small children, or I'm going to have children in the next, year or two. Is this particular dog going to be appropriate for that situation? Super important, because we never want to put children at risk. If the dog is a bit older, you want to ask things like, does the dog have any behavioral issues? The thing that pops into my mind is resource guarding.
Yeah.
That's a real tough one. So, and every ethical rescue organization should be temperament testing their dog and their dogs that they're adopting out. And within that temperament test is a resource guarding test.
Yeah.
Very easy to determine whether a dog has a tendency to resource guard. The reason I bring that one up is because that's the easiest way to get bitten if you're a child.
Yep.
And you're living with the dog, right? They have something that they consider theirs, whether it's a toy, a bone, food, the couch, the bed, and the dog determines that this is my resource and you can't have it. And a child, wanders into that bubble, and the dog bites them.
Yep.
And that's a huge factor in why children get bitten. So,
and it's hard to break. From a trainer standpoint, is probably one of the hardest behaviors to break. So if you're getting a dog with these behaviors, I would be counting in how much you're going to have to pay for training.
And, with something like resource guarding, it's tricky because it is in large part the behavior of the person in that exchange that needs to change. And kids aren't capable of that.
No.
Right? So if you have a dog that resource guards, something falls on the floor, a piece of food falls on the floor, and they're resource guarding it. You as an adult can say, okay, I'm going to back off. I'm not going to make a big deal about this. I'm going to let him eat that piece of chicken, and I'm just going to move on and not make a big deal about it. A child is not going to have the intellectual capacity to do those things. So also, resource guarding is a tough one.
Having another dog in the house. So if that dog does resource guard and you have another dog in the house who doesn't,
who's completely oblivious.
Yeah, and they just walk right by as, there's a toy on the ground, and that dog redirects on your dog who's been living with you for how many years. That's not fair either. So we also have to match the dog from the shelter to the temperament of the dog that you have. So if you have a really calm lab and you're going to the shelter and getting a really high energy not even a puppy, like a really high energy dog of some kind, it doesn't match your lifestyle. It doesn't match the dog the dog that you have existing at your house is not going to have fun with that dog. And the whole point of you getting another dog for the most part is to have the dog that you have at home to have a playmate. So you need to try to also have compatibility there as well.
Yeah, and of course a really old dog, and then bringing in a puppy. And I know people do this a lot because they see that their older dog is got limited time left, and they think, well, let's get a puppy now. Before our older dog passes away. And I understand that impulse, and it can be done, but you have to be much more willing to step in and redirect that puppy and make sure that you don't make the life of that senior dog absolutely miserable
for the last year or so.
Last year of their life, right? Just horrible. And you can absolutely do that and make sure that the puppy is not annoying the crap out of that older dog. That's something to consider as well. It's a good point. Other dogs in the house.
And also, I've had experience with one of my friends, and her grandparents had this older lab, and he was just really lazy and chill and just like such a nice boy. He would recall. I mean, he was just a nice dog. They didn't have to have electric fence. You just let him out. He would just come back. And then they went and they got a retriever puppy, a high energy retriever puppy, and she broke every single good habit that he had.
Yeah.
So we also have to think about that too, of like, are we setting our older dog up for success? Or is he enjoying himself? I mean, she would just take everything from him, and he would like not have any toys anymore. He would run away outside. He wouldn't recall. The other dog was getting him to rip boxes and stuff. So, understand what you're bringing into your house.
Yeah, and I think that that's another good point, is that I see mistakes happen over and over again where people have a dog, a certain breed of dog, a purebred dog, right, that is not terribly typical of that breed. Remember, we talked about the dial. You can turn it up, you can turn it down, but you can't turn it on or off. So you have a dog who on the dial is way, way, way on the low energy, whereas typical for that breed, which would be the dial much more to the right. And they think, wow, I didn't know it was so easy to have this fill in the blank breed. This is easy. Let's get another one. And then they go out and get another of that same breed, and that puppy is much more typical of that breed. And they're blown away and dismayed and traumatized and upset, and it's a whole thing. So
it's the dog, and I'm like, no.
But we have one before. We had one before. Okay, it's important to know: is your purebred dog, is their temperament typical for that particular breed? Right? If you look at Ty, if you never had an Australian Shepherd before and you only had Tiberius, and then got another Australian Shepherd, you'd be super shocked because Ty is way, way, way mellow for an Aussie.
Super
way mellow.
I mean, he just sleeps all day.
He just is the mellowest, sweetest guy.
And then you get Meadow, and she's on the complete opposite side.
Right.
And partly why we bred them together, to kind of have a middle ground. But yeah, so, this is also kind of going back to what we talked about other podcasts on, do you really know the breed you have?
Right. And is your dog typical to that breed?
Exactly.
And if not, when you get your next dog, are you going to be prepared for them to be more typical?
Yeah.
That's a big one. For our dogs, we have 9 of them at this point. So they really run the entire range of Australian Shepherds, from the highest drive to the lowest drive. We're prepared for it all. This little puppy I have, this new little puppy, is really somewhere in the middle. She has a very nice, smooth temperament, which is really what I was looking for, as we talked about before. So we're talking about breed, knowing your breed, and if you're bringing in another of that same dog, being prepared for that dog to be maybe somewhere else in that dial for that breed, and not being shocked and upset, and being prepared mentally for that to be the case.
And this all goes down to compatibility. Are they compatible to your life? Are they compatible to your dog's life? Are they compatible to your children? Are they compatible to your house? So it's
But they're so pretty.
Yeah, that's a big one, man.
They're so pretty. I've always wanted one.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's completely, the worst decision for your life. So that we all choose dogs based on emotion, myself included.
Yep.
I mean, I am just as guilty as everyone else when I see a picture online of a puppy and I think there was just something about that picture. I knew that was my dog. I mean, like everyone says that, including me. I say it too, and then I go and do my research and make sure that the background of that dog meets my criteria. But people frequently make mistakes by getting, romanticizing a particular breed or the look of a particular breed and not doing the research behind it and realizing that, oh, yes, Bichons are really beautiful. I didn't realize they take so much grooming to look like all the pictures of Bichons on the internet.
Well, you can go back to your history when you got Kelsey.
Oh, that she was super freaking cute?
She was super freaking cute.
Oh, my God.
You got her from the shelter. She was super freaking cute. And what is she? A cattle dog corgi mix.
Yeah. No, she was a tough dog. But she was, I think, the cutest puppy to date that I've ever seen. She was so adorable. Yeah. So, like I say, I'm just as guilty as everyone else. What I know now, after purchasing so many dogs and breeding dogs and training dogs all of these years, is that I am just as emotional as everybody else, but then I set it aside and then I do my research and make sure that everything behind the scenes matches that really cute picture.
Yep.
So whether you're getting a dog from a rescue organization, a shelter, or a breeder, in all of those situations, you need to have something on paper that says, if this dog doesn't work out, I can return them.
Mm-hmm.
Super important, because you need to be able to have the option for whatever reason. If the dog doesn't turn out to be what you expected, and I mean in an extreme, right? So you get this dog and it's aggressive. It's not supposed to be aggressive, and you have to return it because you can't have it in your household, or one of 1,000 different things that you did not expect, even though you did your research. You have to have the resource to return that dog so it can ethically go back into the breeder's home and be rehomed appropriately into a different home, right? To somebody who's better prepared for these attributes that did not work for you or whatever. Or if a rescue organization will not, with open arms, welcome the return of your dog, of the dog that you took, that you thought was going to work, that did not, that is not a rescue group you want to work with, period. Same with a breeder. If a breeder won't take their dog back, no questions asked, that is not a breeder you want to work with. And that should be in both contracts, in the rescue dog contract that you're signing and the breeder contract that you're signing. I have never had to take back any of my dogs, but it is written in the contract, and I will do it at any age. So if they're 13, I will be taking them back. It's in fact required that they come back to me and not be rehomed if something happens. And life is funny. People have to return dogs for all kinds of reasons, many of them not their own fault. A family member falls ill, something happens, very, traumatic happens to the family, and they can't keep the dog. You have to be able to return it from whence it came, right? And any reputable shelter, rescue group, or breeder will have that in the contract, and you guys need to look for that. So one final thought about adopting dogs from rescue organizations and shelters. Dogs are pre-wired for behavior. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that you, through loving this dog, can fix it. Because if they come with deep-seated behavioral issues, you're going to need real professional help to work around those issues. Some of them can be solved, and some of them have to be managed. And you have to be prepared for the worst case scenario for that behavior.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not, this is not the dog for you. And just don't delude yourself that the dog just needed a good home and love, because by and large, if they're already in the pipeline of rescue and they've been in other homes and been returned, chances are this dog's got some really serious behavioral issues.
Mm-hmm.
In rare cases, it wasn't the dog's fault, and the people that adopted them were jerks and returned them. But if you're going to go down that route, you need to be really clear-eyed in what is involved and be prepared to work around these problems. You're by and large not going to be able to change them because a lot of this stuff is hardwired.
Yep.
And as professional trainers, of course, we always recommend that every dog participate in some professional training. Having good training clarifies the expectations for the dog. It really makes their lives clear so that they can fulfill your wishes. If you just want them to be something and you're not able to communicate what that is to the dog, they're never going to be what you want them to be. So training is super important. There's lots of resources online. There's lots of, clips on YouTube on how to work, how to train your dog and how to work around some behavioral issues. There's so many free resources. And of course, there's us, professional dog trainers and people like us who do this for a living. Dog training is always a fabulous investment and should always be looked at divided over the next 13 years.
Yep.
Because you're really going to get so much more out of your relationship with your dog if they're well trained and you guys have good communication. And
it's just a common language.
Yep. And that's what we do for a living. So that was another long episode. What are we at, Jacob? 60. Oh, only 60 minutes. This is like a shorty for us. I hope we were able to sort of communicate some of our thoughts on purchasing purebred dogs, adopting shelter dogs and rescue dogs. We really want everybody to be super informed so that they get a dog that can ultimately be compatible. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to come into your home compatible, but if they ultimately can be trained properly to be compatible, those are the dogs that have long, happy lives. And people who love their dogs more than anything for the life of their dog is really a wonderful thing.
Yep, for sure.
All right, so episode 9, in the can. Is that what they say, in the can? I think that's like the film industry, right? If you're finished filming, you put it in the can. You put the film in the can. No?
It's probably like an old saying or something.
Old saying. Episode 9, in the can. Yo.
In the basket.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We love having you. We love doing it. We will be back for episode 10. Not sure what that's going to be about yet, but, Sophie and I have a whole week of dog training to come up with another episode. So we'll see. If you guys have suggestions, shoot them along. I am going to shout out to Margot at Jacob's Job, who suggested this particular episode. Thank you, Margot. And we'll see all of you next time on Dog for Thought. Bye. Dog for Thought is written and hosted by me, Sarah Brown, co-hosted by Sophie Brown, produced, edited, and original music by Jacob Brown. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.